Hey, it's Luminostic. Sorry about that little glitch there. Man, guess my camera wasn't working, and you just have to start over. So that means the link that I shared in all those groups until 2 o'clock in the morning last night is not going to work. Anyways, I'm glad to be here with you. 11/11 is almost like a holiday for me, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit it because it's one of those kind of trendy, new agey sort of things that generally I find myself rolling my eyes at. But it was a big catalyst, really, for my journey with synchronicity. It was one of the early experiences that I had. And it's something that continues to occur up until the present day, much to my surprise, because honestly, after some years, I think I tried to disassociate myself from these sort of, I don't want to call them paranormal because I don't think that's really appropriate, but I was really overwhelmed by the intensity of the parameters of what was available to me in terms of experience, having moved so much. And I think that this is something that happens to a lot of people. And in my own case, I was actually a bit surprised that I reacted that way because I've always been very open-minded. And but at any rate, one of the reasons, the main reason why I think synchronicity is so important. Uh, I don't really want to get into politics exactly here, but it's something that I've noticed manifest in that realm. Our ability to preclude or occult certain manifestations of our experience uh, based on our biases. And I think that what I call the dogma of determinism actually prevents a lot of people from perceiving these more um, subtle expressions of creation. And the importance of that is that it it allows us to project more. It allows us to engage in selective perception, which is not going to facilitate uh, 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 our best, being at our best in managing our experience and interacting with the universe in a way that is consistent with its own expressions and with our being. Um, so I'll give you guys an example of this, and also I'm going to offer solutions that science has determined. This is one of the things I'm most excited about entheogens and psychedelics. Uh, the science is confirming that these things will help us to bridge these gaps in our perception and in our minds and heal the trauma that propels us to overlook these things in the first place, to create these delusions out of um, what's it called? Like a coping mechanism, a psychological coping mechanism, so that we don't have to actually confront reality on objective terms. And so, in the political spectrum, this is something that I noticed very specifically today, is that there aren't really very many sincere Trump supporters or Biden supporters. These people support their perceptions of what they projected onto these people. And I think the reality is that if either Trump or Biden, particularly Harris supporters, were capable of perceiving these people and their records objectively, they wouldn't support any of them. The people would be unified, and they would have elected a third party or overthrown the government this year. That's a fact, and that is powerful. I think that it is only due to cognitive bias and selective perception that we have these people in power. Because I've been doing this all morning. That's one of the reasons that when we started this live stream, I hadn't really taken sufficient notes and collected my head, because I had been challenged by all these people when they were like doing this hero worship of Kamala Harris, and I'm saying, do you guys know all this stuff? And they were calling me a liar, so I had to dig up proof and show them. No, it's incredible that you guys support these people and you have no clue who they are. And so the development of consciousness is the solution to that. And I think that it's why I'm so opposed to toxic spirituality, to doctrinal religion, because it doesn't actually catalyze the changes in consciousness that would result in a conscious revolution, which is, I'm not kidding when I support that stuff. You guys will start noticing that in my thumbnails, my podcast is going to start always, we'll have like the logo, conscious evolution, because that's what I'm really hoping to contribute to inspiring. And I do think, as I said many, many times, that one of the reasons that we're seeing the obviously intentional dividing of populations and pitting them against each other is because the elite know that if people wake up, they're done, right? They're just done. And so I talk about consciousness in order to try to protect the environment. I try to, I talk about consciousness in order to reduce suffering. This isn't just about entertainment or contemplating the paranoia or the metaphysical. We need real, pragmatic, applicable uses for this stuff. And that is what we're going for with this 11/11 live stream. And as I was alluding to before, the 11/11 thing, it's massive. I was surprised last night when I was doing the promotion. I looked at the groups, and there was like, some of them had like 170,000 people, and there was a whole shit ton of them. And so I think there are a number of reasons for this. As Carl Jung said, by the way, synchronicity was coined by the eminent Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, for those of you who might not know, in order to describe phenomena that were connected by meaning, but at least not obviously causally connected. And he had various definitions, but I think that's probably sufficient and the best. And what he observed is that when the bridge between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind was connected, that these synchronicities would somehow start to occur. And since, as I have stated, it appears that we are undergoing sort of a global expansion of consciousness. People are drinking ayahuasca in numbers that no one would have imagined 20 years ago. I mean, when I was in high school and I would mention ayahuasca or DMT to people, they would like, what are you talking about? And so that is an incredible development. And it's not just psychedelics. I mean, for a number of years, for decades now, yoga has been increasing in popularity, even though I don't think that most of the popular forms of yoga that are being practiced in the United States have anything to do with yoga. It's still, I think, just the intention of creating union within the selves, striving for harmony, spiritual advancement. Meditation is more popular than ever. This stuff is causing this. Oh, and also, psilocybin and other psychedelics have been demonstrated in brain scans to increase connectivity between parts of the brain that don't normally communicate. And not only that, but there has been electrical activity observed in parts of the brain where there normally is none under any circumstances. And I think it's easy to undervalue that. I mean, literally, like, they've done brain scans on advanced Buddhist meditators, like, monks, and they're not even, those guys have electrical activity in these parts of the brain that we're seeing with entheogenic substances. And so I've noticed a lot in, as my work as a facilitator, people mention this, the author Daniel Pinchbeck, who I know was scandalized, and I hesitate to even mention him because I think we're generally trying to forget this guy. But I liked how he referred to the after effects of DMT as like an occult hangover. And this is something I experienced myself for weeks after contact with dimethyltryptamine. You have all these synchronistic experiences and other types of what we might call parapsychological phenomena or paranormal phenomena, which I think is a bad name. Maybe we should come up with something else. But yeah, lots of people have noticed that these experiences tend to increase dramatically after contact with ayahuasca or psilocybin or any other of these substances. And it actually does support Jung's theory that this was due to increased connectivity between parts of the brain, although he wasn't necessarily speaking about physical regions of the brain, which is what we're observing, although obviously that should be reflective. Okay, so I guess I'll give you guys a little bit of background about my own experiences. I know I've mentioned some of this stuff in my other videos, and some of you guys watch them all, so I don't want to be too redundant, but we need to we need to create some kind of foundation for this discussion. So the first synchronicities that I experienced involving the number 11 was sort of during a wave of synchronistic experiences that were not only perceived by myself alone, but by oftentimes the group of people that I was with. And that was very interesting to me, because usually when people have these kind of experiences, they're alone and it's easy to doubt their story. Or they have taken psychedelics, which, by the way, I don't think discredits them, but in the minds of a lot of people it would. So that was very helpful to me as well, because it sort of gave me a consensus, which is sort of how we sort of instinctively define our reality. And so this was pretty early on in this wave of experiences. But one night I was sitting having a conversation with my girlfriend, who was an artist, and she was on the floor in the trailer where we were living. I think I was like 31, and so it was about 10 years ago, or 11. Yeah, I think it's about the 11th anniversary, right about nowish. At any rate, so she's doing some kind of drawing on the floor, and she just randomly says to me, well, what do you know about the numerology of the number 11? And this is not something we had been discussing a lot. It's not like this was a big topic. It literally just came out of nowhere. And so the song 11 by Tool comes on the stereo, which was odd, but not nearly as odd as what would happen next. I start talking about, what I knew about the number 11, and she starts kind of interrupting me and grumbling, and I'm like, what is going on? What is your problem? And she said, I don't know. And she picks up the ruler and she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And she says, well, there's 2 11s printed on this thing. First of all, that doesn't make sense, because it's not like some person is making the ruler and made a mistake. This, I would assume, is machine fabricated in a mold. So there's literally like no way that would happen that makes any sense. And to double down on the synchronistic effect, I guess, of the circumstance, the second 11 was printed where the 23 should be. And 23 was a number that I associated with synchronicity because of having read the Illuminatus trilogy 3 or 4 times, Robert Anton Wilson's masterpiece, which I'm always recommending. If you haven't read that book, you're out of your fucking mind. It's a really important masterpiece, and it really will help you show how sophisticated illuminated consciousness can be, and how convoluted of a web it could create. I mean, I really feel like that book is extremely important for anyone on the path to read 3 or 4 times, even though it's 1,100 pages long. So that was the situation with the ruler. Suddenly, we're talking about the number 11. This Tool song comes on, and there's 2 11s misprinted on this ruler somehow. And I just noticed the second I said 11, the number of viewers, there we go, it's gone. Anyways, but it gets weirder. And this is one of the things that I think is so important about synchronicity, when it has conceptual continuity. When it's not an isolated coincidence, or the meaning is not, you'll see what I mean. It's like it's weaving in a coherent story through these meaningful coincidences. And so a few weeks later, we were invited randomly to meet with a group of Native American ceremonial chiefs, I guess, because I don't feel good about using a generic name. I mean, they were from all over the world. There were South American, North American, there were even some like Asian Zen Buddhist type guys. And one of them, his talk was about the 1111 frequencies. So of course I sit down and this guy starts talking, and we've already observed a bunch of like mind-blowing things with this group of people from the moment we arrived. I mean, they're commanding the wind. They did a rain dance. It was like clear as a bell, and it poured rain. And then as soon as we look up, it's gone. Completely nuts, you know. So they had our attention, and he's speaking about these 1111 frequencies. And still to the okay, and then this is the one when I made the video about this story, I actually somehow just totally left this element out. The weekend that we spent at this event with these Native Americans and others, uh, uh, I noticed that there were all these similarities with this Tool song. I'll have to post the name in the comments because I can't recall it. Last night I was trying, I forgot to look it up today. But it's on 10,000 Days, and it's about an alien abduction, which was another theme of this weekend with these people. And it's not like I felt like I hadn't like lost my mind and thought I was like living through a Tool song or something. You know, it wasn't like that, but there were just all these weird similarities between things that popped up in the lyrics and people that were there, like the descriptions of this blue-green alien with Isabella Rossellini lips and almond somniferous eyes. Like there was this Asian lady in a blue-green dress, and the alien smelled like vanilla Nag Champa, and she smelled like vanilla Nag Champa, and she had this really powerful aura, and her almond somniferous eyes, like they were really like you couldn't look away, you know, and she was Asian, so they were very almond. And it was, and I found myself in the fetal position eating an orange, which the character in the song ends up doing. And then like 10 years later, I happened to flip over the CD and I look at the time on the track, 11 minutes and 11 seconds. Not only that, but the track before it is Native Americans chanting, and it's 1 minute and 11 seconds long. So I'm just looking at this like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. You know, this makes no sense. And another one that happened recently, and that I've gotten some crap for actually, because it's so ridiculous. People have accused me of cheating, of editing the video to create this effect. First of all, if you guys watch my videos, you know that we are not pros at editing at all. In fact, we were doing most of it on a Chromebook. You know, and Enrico's gotten really good at it. But I shouldn't have said it that way. It's not that we're not pros. It's just that up until recently, we haven't had great equipment. So anyways, I made a video when we were out in the jungle about what I've come to call the Phoenix process. And I was mentioning that just putting my Rosetta Stone is the song. Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Rosetta Stone. Okay, so the Phoenix process video. I was saying that just thinking about this kind of stuff can provoke it to occur. And I mentioned the 1111 synchronicities at that moment. And later, you know, the cards with the link that you can click on to go to different videos that YouTubers put up there. I'll put one link into this video. I was looking through it trying to find, I knew I mentioned the 1111. I couldn't find it. And then I was like, no way, it couldn't be. And I clicked on the 11 minute and 11 second marker, and I say 1111, and it's a 4-minute video. You can see that it was videoed in 4 different locations over 3 weeks. Basically the editing is random. It's like juggled together. And so I would like to see like a calculation of the probability that would just happen, you know. And it's not actually the only synchronicity in the video. A few minutes later, I think around the 23-minute marker, I say there's this type of meditation where you freeze an object in your mind and try to maintain it as long as you possibly can. And as soon as I say that, the computer glitches and my face freezes. So sounds like some dogs are fighting back there. So it's just wild how this stuff goes, and it's impressive, or it's baffling when it is mental, when you have an intuition. For example, the other day I was riding the bus home from Loja, and I didn't even have my phone with me. I didn't say this out loud, so it's not like my microphone picked it up and then Google hit me with an ad when I got home. Literally impossible, because I didn't say it. I was alone. There was no one to talk to. So I was thinking about how, like, I wonder if anyone still watches South Park and if it's ever been popular in South America. And so, because I had seen no references to it in Ecuadorian media, since I've lived here for 2 years, and it was just like this random thought. And I get home and I get on the computer, and the first thing that I see is some woman dressed like Cartman speaking Spanish. So that kind of thing is weird. But when these synchronicities manifest in physical objects like that ruler, it's still there the next day. I mean, I had to check, believe me. I got in the open the drawer, pull the thing out, like this really happened. I mean, and there were even more difficult to process instances of this in this period. It has nothing to do with 11/11, but I was working on a job, and forgive me if you watch the channel a lot. I know that I've told this story a few times, but I was working on like a roof, tearing it down, and the phone rings, and it's my girlfriend, and she says, "Hey, I just got a picture of these four bears in the front yard," and I had her on speakerphone, so all my coworkers heard it. And I've been babbling about all these synchronicities with them every day for a while at this point, so they're aware of what's happening. And I hang up the phone, and I pull the insulation out, and bear claws fall out from behind the insulation. And so what I'm getting at with the ruler and the bear claws and why that is so important is that this concept that the universe is somehow fundamentally made of consciousness is sort of the explanation that Jung gave for how these experiences manifest. And the way that he put it was that, clearly matter is just mind in another form. And yeah, of course. Carlos said that, imagine, if you will, AM/FM radio, when it's off, nothing is heard, but when you turn it on, the frequency is ayahuasca or psychedelics, like an AM/FM radio. That's actually Dennis McKenna is not alone in this, but neurobiologists, some of them have a theory that a part of what psychedelics do is remove filters that we have developed as an evolutionary mechanism to filter out the majority of the incoming signals from the universe, because it would be so overwhelming if we could perceive all of the energy that's morphing and changing. And so, yeah, absolutely. And so it is also true that Jung was Gnostic in some way. He was a mystic. He he actually said that he toned that part of himself down because he was afraid of being discredited with his more what would you call, like, orthodox colleagues, which baffles me, because it's like, it's kind of an all or nothing sort of, when he's already gotten that weird. It seems like putting a filter on it didn't really do him a whole hell of a lot of good. Okay, so the apparent therapeutic value of synchronicities and following them, or learning to interpret them, as a lot of people have suggested. This is where the dark side of this kind of phenomena rears its head. And it's something that I honestly wish I had been more aware of when I started to have these experiences. One of the big criticisms of synchronicity theory is that apophenia, which is attributing meaning to coincidences that are actually just coincidences, is interestingly often a sign of the onset of schizophrenia. It should be noted as well that the onset of spiritual awakening is often very much indistinguishable from the onset of schizophrenia. In fact, if it's really a deep mystical transformation, it's the only real difference, I think, is, well, that's a little bit much, but the most significant difference is that you'll snap out of it. Schizophrenia, you're not just going to pass through a phase of foggy fogginess, or some delusion, or however this manifests in your individual case. But this is something to be really aware of. When this was happening with me, for example, one of the most annoying things that I've ever experienced, and you see this a lot with people, and you can't really blame them, God bless them, everybody wants to have these experiences and believe that they're, achieving illumination, or that they're having a breakthrough, or whatever it is. But a lot of times, when people become aware of this stuff, they start thinking that every dumb thing that they see is a synchronicity. Every string of numbers in a license plate has meaning, and it's really not the case. And I have literally watched people lose their minds with this kind of wrong side of the rabbit hole descent, is how I have come to refer to it. It is very easy to become a muddle-headed mystic and sort of lose your bearings if you're not careful. And this is where it is extremely important to balance skepticism with open-mindedness. And this is something that I think people fail dramatically at. I'm always citing what's his name, Russell Brand is always talking about how he's hesitant to open the woo door at all, because he doesn't really believe that it's capable to filter it, that you can maintain reason and not abandon science completely in order to have a spiritual life, that it's this like all or nothing, that if you're going to believe that synchronicities are something other than a manifestation of random chance, that you also have to believe that everyone that claims to be channeling Melchizedek or Saint Jerome or whatever, that they are all really doing it, and that you just have to believe in all of the spiritual woo nonsense in the entire universe. And that is obviously highly unadvisable. Really, really bad idea. I mean, look, you guys, there is a reason that all spiritual traditions have, and I'm talking about in like native societies, indigenous societies, or even the Anglo-Saxon tribes before Christianity completely destroyed them and separated them from their true spiritual practices. There were adepts, there were masters. People were guided. We don't have that so much now. And so we have to take responsibility more than those historical people and people in the jungles for our own development. And I think that because we have lost respect culturally for the mystic, the shaman, the seer, yes, in a moment. We underestimate the importance of respecting the spiritual path, meaning that it is a skill that must be acquired, that must be cultivated. One must learn to train the mind, and you will be amazed at its determination and skill at evading your constraint, right? And without discernment, without skepticism, without self-awareness, you can get yourself in a ton of trouble, and synchronicity can be a blessing or a curse. Every phenomena in the universe has within it the capacity to manifest in either direction. It's all a matter of how the operator relates to the tool. So, okay, so speaking on the positives of smoking native tobacco, I mean, that's almost synchronistic because what we're talking about here is maintaining focus and expanding the parameters of what we're willing to entertain without becoming muddle-headed mystics or flakes or however you want to think about it. Walking a tightrope, basically a spiritual tightrope. And so generally, tobacco is not smoked in South America. And I will tell you a story that a shaman told me about the discovery of tobacco. I don't know what the origins of this story are, but the legend is that two guys from two different tribes were walking along and they encountered a pale-faced woman with long white hair, and she was holding a leaf. And so one of the natives looked at her and said, "Man, I wonder what she's like in bed," or he thought that. And as soon as he had the thought, she burst into flames and disappeared in a puff of smoke. And the other man looked at her and said, "I wonder what I could learn from her." And she spoke to him in his own tongue, and she said, "This is the tobacco plant. Only use it in ceremony. Never inhale it into your lungs. If you use it with respect, it will help you to focus your mind when you need to make an important decision. It will protect you from disease. It will aid you and guide you as a true ally. There are ones like me with pale skin who will come later, and they will use this plant to enslave, to create disease." And she handed him the leaf and turned into a buffalo and ran away into the sunset. And so that is the essence of tobacco. It's not really surprising me, but that's another video that I've made that I've gotten a lot of flack for, because Westerners have become accustomed to the idea that nicotine is a neurotoxin, that tobacco is just bad. And I have drank tobacco juice, and I can tell you that it is one of the most therapeutic experiences that I've ever had. It helped me to overcome an issue that I had with my temper that had plagued me for decades, with only a couple of, I think, 3 sessions. It's not nearly as horrific as you would imagine. I don't seem to have suffered any brain damage, so I think the neurotoxin reputation is probably a bit exaggerated. And as you might know, when you drink ayahuasca with the Shuar and a lot of other tribes, I believe some of the tribes will drink it before in order to purge, but with the Shuar, it's just taken in the nose, the liquid. If you start to come unhinged, it focuses the mind and pulls you together. And actually, I do it sometimes when I'm not in ceremony as an aid to meditation. So I apologize, I was a bit off topic, but the intro before that is called Lost Keys. No, it's not. It's only because you said that. That's part of the Rosetta Stoned Lost Keys, Blame Hoffman. That's all part of the title. The minute and 11 seconds of ceremonial chant before that is called something else. It's not Sue. Anyways, that's not correct. Rape, no, rape is generally it's from Brazil, and it is a combination of ashes, usually from sunu or some other tree. We use Palo Santo and eucalyptus sometimes, and it can be a combination of up to like 22 different plants. And it's ground into a powder and blown in the nose with crepe or tepi. And so liquid rape in the nose is a different thing. Okay, so let's get back on the subject of synchronicities. So one of the popular explanations or advice that is given to people, particularly in the New Age community, in reference to these numbers, particularly 1111, or in reference to synchronicities, is that they are signs from the universe that are intended to guide you. And I actually never looked up 1111, even though I have had so many experiences with it. I just didn't really want to. Honestly, I don't care what other people think about stuff for the most part, to be blunt. I only do research if it's like scientific, or when it comes to subjective interpretation of metaphysics, I very rarely will. Lipen conjuring, you're absolutely, that's it. Lipen conjuring, I don't really even know how to say it. So I never looked into it until last night, because I thought, well, if I'm doing this live stream, maybe I should at least see what it is that people say about 1111. And so I did, and it the main interpretation was that it was an indication that some sort of major opportunity was opening up to you from the universe. And in my case, it was extraordinarily positively the case. That doesn't do you any good if you are not prepared, by the way. And this is so important. The most perfect set of talents and virtues in the absence of willpower and discipline is totally useless. Most complete set of virtues in the absence of willpower and discipline is totally useless. And I would add to that without without some psychoanalysis or some therapy prior to expanding consciousness, it's like you have stormed heaven and stolen secrets by violence. You now have all of this power, like when Einstein split the atom and then they blew up Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's the same kind of thing. It is totally possible to pierce the veil, to acquire greater powers of manifestation. And if you have deep-seated psychological aberrations, neuronets of not deserving or self-sabotage, you will manifest your dreams in the most improbable ways and then refuse to accept them, which is ultimately what I did after this series of synchronicities. And I'm not going to get into the details of exactly what the circumstances were, but it was a major, major, and totally almost impossible opportunity in music. And interestingly, and I know I told this story in a video, I think the Phoenix Process video, if you guys are curious, and I will put a link if you want to come back, or you can just search the channel. But it was another experience involving telepathy as well that was undisputable, absolutely indisputably, truly telepathy. And there was, I'm still in contact with this person. I've considered doing a podcast where I interview her, because some of the stories that are the most, that challenge people's credulity, I guess, she was witness to all of that. So I thought it'd be interesting to get her on. I don't know if she'll be willing, but I'm definitely going to ask her. She's the girl that was there for with the 1111 ruler. It was her ruler. By the way, you guys, before I go on with this, I forgot to kind of get into the part of these synchronicities, especially when they involve physical objects, that is such a challenge to come to terms with, because the universe, nothing happens that's impossible in the way that I understand it. Nothing overrides natural law. You know, even according to the secret doctrine of the Hermeticists and Freemasons and the Western mystery tradition, you know, it is said that everything has a mechanism of action. Our deterministic materialistic view has sort of artificially limited the scope of our perception, so that there's more that is possible than we generally acknowledge as a culture at large, but nothing happens that is not facilitated by natural law, right? So if you consider the number of circumstances that had to align in order for us to be somehow compelled to start discussing the number 11, and for her to have opened that ruler, it was the first time she'd ever used it. It was literally like the conversation started, she was unpeeling the plastic from the ruler, right? Obviously, or she would have noticed it before, first of all. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, the thing had to be misprinted, shipped to Durango, Colorado, which is a relatively small mountain town, purchased, opened, and then in use right as we're discussing the number 11. And then the chances that we would find ourselves in the audience of a Sioux Sundance chief who is telling us about these 1111 frequencies a couple weeks later. I mean, it really does imply, at least to me, that there is some kind of grand universal consciousness that I don't want to say orchestrates, but I mean, you guys, we can totally take the woo out of it, and you can understand it just in terms of order and patterns. How consciousness imposes order upon vibration by means of geometry and symmetry. We can still understand how consciousness could communicate with us without even really attributing any kind of spiritual office to this consciousness or intelligence, which I think is awesome. You know, I mean, the completely deterministic, materialistic, atheistic a view has created a crisis of purpose. And I think that that is why, you know, we see social media eating people's brains alive. Suicides among young girls have gone up 200%. People don't care about the environment because they don't think that anything matters. They don't care what they do because they don't believe anymore that there's any consequence or any meaning or any purpose. And I think that if we all are aware that we are just avatars of one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, and that we will ultimately experience everything from every point of view before it's all said and done, it would give us a different sense of responsibility to our actions. And not only would it negate our tendency to cause suffering in other sentient beings, but it would also provoke us to be more self-sacrificing and to be more concerned with actually spreading joy and inspiration, because we are just, it's one big universal jerk off, you know, to be vulgar and hopefully funny about it. Would you like to share it, Olive Kevla? I would be happy to offer any insight or commentary on it that I can, if possible. So, okay, so we were going somewhere with this, the telepathy story. So, I had just gone through this wild experience, and I had refused this in totally improbable opportunity that I was expecting and anticipating by following this string of coincidences. And I had separated from my girlfriend at the time because I felt like it was something I needed to do alone. And she was a mile away on a mountain, like she had just some pickup truck had picked her up, and they had gone up a mountain and were all like tailgating or something. And this was in Telluride, Colorado. And so when I ran into her again, she had come down off the mountain, and she walks up to me and she's like, I realized that you were at the car and you had tears running down your eyes after you petted that Burmese mountain dog. And I mean, all these details, and she's bawling, and she's talking about what I was thinking word for word. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I said, how do you know all this stuff? What? And she was like, well, they were narrating. And I didn't bother to ask her who they were. You know, I just assumed that, you know, during this period I had, sometimes I could even visualize them. These sort of inner guides that I never decided were not a part of my mind or not. You know, I just decided not to make my mind about that. But there were different ones that would come to deal with different, like, departments or something. Like, there were these three sort of like elven women that would show up with notepads sometimes when I was trying to manifest something, and it was just totally off the wall weird, you know, just in my mind's eye. like I said, I never decided that they were objectively real, but man, they sure were accurate about stuff and seemed wiser than me oftentimes and whatnot. So I just assumed it was something along those lines. And like I said, if I get her on to do an interview, I'll press her for the first time about how that happened live on the podcast. But when she said, they told me that you had refused the opportunity because you were carrying something too heavy. That is what really got me, because it took me many years to understand this, because I would repeatedly follow these synchronicities and I had learned to accept my intuition to some degree, although I still had really big self-esteem problems and huge self-sabotaging patterns that I traced all the way back to my childhood, but still hadn't managed to totally negate the effects, right? Because when you have neural nets that are that old, it's much more difficult to loosen their grip on your behavioral patterns, right? To break the spell. Well, Mark, he's talking about how, they could be real or not, and I totally agree, and that's why I didn't make up my mind. And I would offer along those lines that I think it's best not to make up your mind about this kind of stuff. I think that the desire that people have to get answers has led to a shit ton of problems. We only the madman is absolutely